Hello and welcome to the 4th edition of how to utilize a cheap spring reverb all while being a cheap Well, folks, today is an exciting day. We are officially graduating to an outboard equipment designed to be used for spring reverb. I know, this is crazy. We went from using a hi-fi spring reverb unit to a guitar amplifier, then to a PA mixer, and now we're finally where we want to be, using a piece of equipment specifically designed for this purpose. Now, this piece of equipment is sitting right here behind me, the Fostex 3180. Hopefully, I pointed at the right piece of equipment. There are many options out there on the market, both new and used, for outboard spring reverb units. In my opinion, the Fostex 3180 is probably the best bang for your buck that you're going to get on the used market. While this is a pretty big bang for your buck, I have to admit it does come with its detriments. Mainly being the noise floor on this baby is really loud, and on quiet sections, you could definitely hear it. On other parts of the songs, if you're looking for it, you could hear it as well, but usually it's hidden as long as you don't overdo it. There's a couple other cheap contenders out there that sound way better. For example, like the Furman RV-1. That one has a lot more features and a lot more better sounding spring reverb. First, we're going to go over the layout of the machine and talk about its features and how all the knobs turn and all this jazz. And after that, we're going to go through a demonstration of how I use this on during mixing. Okay, let's take a closer look at this unit. This unit actually has 2 spring reverbs inside it, indicated by the 2 channels. And according to the manual, each spring is slightly different sounding than the other. The difference is subtle. You could definitely tell it if you really try to pay attention to it. And this allows for some really interesting stereo effects and great feature. Now, right now, all my audio you hear is actually going through this unit. And so, like right now, actually, let's go over the buttons first, actually. So obviously here we have the power button. We have the inputs and the outputs. We have the controls for channel 1, controls for channel 2, and then you have these other buttons here that I'll go into detail in a second. Now, all my connections to this machine are actually on the back side, and that's just easier for me on the setup I have going. But you could easily connect to the front here. So over here we have channel 1, channel 2. Here's how we control channel 1. Here's the input knob with the clipping indicator. So if I bring this up, now if I talk, it's probably really loud in your speakers, but you can see it's clipping. Now, this thing's got a good amount of mojo when you start clipping it, so don't be afraid if that thing starts to light up. Sometimes you just want to push it. So right now, I have just a dry signal going through. Let's add a little verb on the bad boy. Let's see. Talking, Fostex reverb unit. Wow, I sound like I'm in a church, don't I? Now, in my opinion, this sounds pretty rich. I'm going to get rid of the dry sound now and just have the full-on reverb. So here we go. You can hear a little bit of distortion, but not enough to hurt anyone. Now, as you can hear, this is a pretty lengthy delay. I'm going to put that down. All right. Hopefully you guys can understand what I'm saying right now. But something I want to demonstrate is if I bang on my console here, you can't really see my hand, but you can hear the spring reverb bounce around there. Now, that's usually not going to be a problem because people aren't going to be banging on your console. However, if your monitor speakers are on, sometimes I get a feedback loop going on and the reverb just gets out of control and I actually have to start mixing at a lower volume, which usually isn't a bad thing. You shouldn't be doing your mixes with your monitor speakers cranked. So anyway, that's channel 1. Channel 2 is exactly the same. Here we have the input mix button, which allows you to mix the 2 inputs you have going into it. And once again, that just, it allows you to create different effects, different stereo fields. Very useful feature, really like that. Here is, sorry, I'm gonna turn that down a little bit. Here is the Reverb remote jack input, where you could use a foot switch to turn on the reverb effect for on and off. Here's the output for channel 1 and channel 2. As I said, my connections are on the back. So, you know, I really don't utilize this. Sometimes I utilize it. Sometimes I'll just plug a guitar straight into here and crank the input and get a really overdriven sound. You could have a lot of fun with this thing. It's a really good, you know, garage rock staple, in my opinion. So hopefully someone out there has this unit, and if you don't, maybe you're going to want to buy it, because listen to it. Listen. Isn't it beautiful? It's beautiful. Okay, I'm sorry. I was getting really out of hand there, but you get the idea. So I use this machine on a lot of tracks, and as I mentioned before, it does have a high noise floor, and that's just something I deal with, and, you know, it kind of fits my garage sound, so I don't make that too big of a deal of it. But you really have to be careful with your gain staging with this machine, and really just trying to maximize your usable sound without clipping, and trying to get that noise floor as low as possible in the mix. You could probably benefit greatly by using a noise gate with this machine, and that would take care of all the noise floor issues that I have. But personally, that's part of the mojo for cheap spring reverb. You know, it's supposed to be hissy. It's supposed to have that velvety noise in the background. It's what I like, and hopefully you like it too. And we just deal with it. The main song demonstration that I'm going to be using in this video today is a really unique track, and it was me trying something different. I was trying to go for a faux live track, and I was going for a lot of reverb. I wanted it to sound like someone just put a tape recorder in the middle of a hall and was just recording the ambiance of the stage, and hopefully that's what comes across when you hear the song. I would love to hear opinions on what people think of it. When I was mixing this song, I took 2 approaches to the spring reverb. I individually sent, I'm pretty sure all the tracks I recorded through the unit and added a spring reverb layer there. And then additionally, when I was done with that and I was doing my final mix down, I added an additional whole mix bus spring reverb layer in there. So there is a lot of spring reverb. It's messy, it's gritty. You know, the vocals are buried in some spots, and like that's kind of what I was going for. I was trying to go for like a kind of like a Bo Diddley live at Miami Beach. No, live at Myrtle Beach, or kind of like a live at the Apollo with James Brown, or Sam Cooke live at the Harlem Square Club, like that type of vibe where it's just the fidelity of the recording is a little lower, but that's part of the vibe, the mojo, and to me that's kind of what garage rock is all about. So hopefully that's what comes across when you hear the mix, and I would love to hear opinions. If you think it sounds like trash, let me know. I would love to know. So here is an excerpt of that now. The rest of the song on my channel. The name of the song is Do the Mashed Potato, and once again I would love to hear your input on that track. One thing I do have to add before I end this video: when I first got this machine, I was having significant issues with distortion in the signal path, and it wasn't a good type of distortion. Something was clearly wrong, And after a little bit of digging on the inside of the unit, I figured out what the issue was. Inside the unit, the main spring reverb used in the machine is mounted on this metal rack, and it is suspended by individually small springs that aren't used in the audio circuitry. They're just meant to suspend the main spring inside the unit, and that's just so, vibrations aren't picked up by people walking around or your hand on the console when you're trying to mix. So, that's why that's suspended like that. And the grounding for that main spring is done through these little suspension springs. And as an engineer, this offends me in so many ways. That is not a reliable way to ground anything. There should always be a hard connection somewhere for a ground. So what I wound up doing was I put a grounding strap from the chassis of the mainspring to the chassis of the unit. And now this has a hard connection of ground, and since then, I've had no issues with distortion. Well, I shouldn't say no issues. Every now and then I gotta bang this thing because one of the knobs is a little funky. But other than that, this thing gets the job done, and I love it. That's why I use it all the time. That's it for today's video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. This is the 4th installment, as I mentioned before, so if you haven't seen the first 3, I highly recommend you watch it. The second episode in particular has really good information for trying to get the best sound out of cheap equipment and really prepping your sound before it ever reaches the spring reverb to kind of shape the type of vibe you're going for, and I highly recommend you watch it. And I would love to hear some feedback. I would love to hear opinions. I would love to hear for some requests for video ideas. Anything you have in mind, I'm all ears. If you have any music that you recorded that I somehow inspired with one of my videos, I would love to hear it. Some people have actually emailed me their music, and that means the world to me that people are inspired by some of the things I say here. So please send me your stuff, and I will listen to it. So good night, everyone. And what?
Tell them to like and subscribe.
No, I'm not gonna. We talked about this. I'm not gonna do that.
Tell them I will end them if they don't like and subscribe.
They don't care. Ugh, I'm sorry about that. Hope you all have a good night, and I will see you next time.